On a beautiful sunny day, Sarah takes her son Josh to the park to have a good time together. They talk about his deceased father, and she leaves him for a moment to grab something from her bag. Just then, Sarah notices a helicopter flying through, triggering a traumatic experience for her. She recalls a painful incident in the military where she was the only survivor of an ambush in which 8 soldiers were killed. Suddenly, a man at the park accidentally bumps into her, and she reacts violently by flipping him over and then breaking his nose with a punch. But she soon gets back to her senses and apologizes to that man. 4 years later, she is still struggling with that traumatic event and takes some pills to control it. One day, she takes her son to apply for a work visa at the U.S. consulate. While at the train station, she receives an email from an investigative journalist who tells her that there is foul play in the military ambush in Afghanistan. To take his investigation forward, he asks her if she identifies anyone in the video he sent her. She dismisses it after not recognizing anyone, only to realize later that her son is missing. She panics and looks around frantically, and eventually finds him in the crowd. She warns him always to stay next to her as she doesn't want to lose him. They finally arrive at the U.S. consulate and go through several security checks before submitting her application. Sarah was then told to wait. In the waiting hall, Josh keeps running around and insists that her mom play hide and seek with him. But Sarah gets angry and tells him to be quiet. She then informs the receptionist that she has been waiting for 3 hours and hasn't been called, and it's getting hard for her to handle her son. The receptionist advises her to take the boy to the children's playground. So she drops him off at the kids' playground and returns to the waiting hall. She eventually gets her turn and rushes to the playground to get her son. On the way, she sees a female janitor and a strange man exchanging a bag. She got to the playground, and to her shock, Josh wasn't there. She initially thinks Josh is trying to play hide and seek and starts looking around, but he is nowhere to be found. Sarah tries to look into the other rooms, but most of them are locked. She begins to panic. Sarah's activity caught the attention of the control room, and 2 security officers approached her for questioning. She told them about her missing son and asked for their help to find him. So they bring in Regional Security Officer Eric Kinch and Sergeant Donovan. They help her search all the closed offices in the building, but still can't find Joshua. As Sarah gets worried, Eric reassures her that they will find her son. He instructs all the security to search the building. Sarah then remembers her encounter with the female janitor and the strange man. She takes Eric to that door and tells him to open it, and she claims they must have done something to her son. Eric refuses to open the door due to security reasons. At that moment, Sergeant Donovan returns and whispers something to Eric. So he requests Sarah to have a private conversation. He takes her to the office and goes through her files. He realizes Sarah is a veteran, who served in Afghanistan until 2017. But she was uninterested and asked for an update on her son. So, Sergeant Donovan informs her that she applied for a visa for herself and her son, but she is the only one who checked into the consulate. Sarah gets confused, so Sergeant Donovan hands her an official list, which confirms she is the only one who checked in. Unable to process these, she requests the security footage. As Sergeant Donovan leaves to get the footage, Sarah becomes desperate and wants to speak with the German police. Eric says he already informed them and put her through. She explains the situation to the police and asks for their help, but they inform her that she is in an exterritorial area and doesn't come under their jurisdiction. They tell her to leave the building to discuss further, but she gets furious as she will never be able to find her son. As she hangs up, Eric assures her that he will find her son. But she tries to escape that room and fights Eric, but he soon stabilizes her. Just before Sergeant returns, Eric instructs her not to leave that room until German police come to pick her up, and he leaves to attend his duties. After a while, Sergeant Donovan also leaves as something comes up, and he locks her in the room. Sarah calls her mother to inform her that the U.S. consulate has kidnapped Josh, and they are covering up their tracks. She requests that her mom call the police and the press. But she doesn't believe Sarah and suspects that she is having another psychotic episode. As she is not getting any help from her mom, Sarah decides to deal with it herself. She goes through that room and finds an office pin and uses it to unlock the door. She leaves the room, and manages to get away without getting caught on camera. As she walks past the playground, she finds her son's toy on the floor, which confirms that her son has been kidnapped. When she gets back to the hallway, she is spotted on the security camera, but luckily the officer gets distracted by Sergeant Donovan. Sarah returns to the spot where she saw the female janitor and the strange man. Since the door is locked, she climbs out of the window and tries to get to the other side of the building and climbs over the vents. She then sees the staircase and tries to make a jump, but she ends up hurting herself and falls to the ground. Now unable to climb up, she breaks into the basement. She starts looking around for her son and tries to check those rooms, but all of them are locked. However, one of the rooms is unlocked, and as she goes to check inside, a woman suddenly attacks her, but she subdues the woman. Sarah asks if she has seen her son, and that woman, Irina, seems to know nothing, so Sarah decides to leave. But Irina stops her and offers help to find her son. She claims to know every corner of the building. Irina reveals that she has been imprisoned for months in that building and wants her help to escape, and Sarah agrees to help her. Meanwhile, Eric informs the Consulate General Deborah Allen about Sarah. She reviews Sarah's profile and learns that she is a trained covert operative and potentially dangerous. However, Eric assures that she is harmless but delusional. She wants Sarah to be gone from that building without drawing any attention. Meanwhile, Sergeant Donovan gets to know that Sarah has escaped, and looks through every surveillance camera to locate her. In the basement, Irina says there were many rooms in the building, but they needed a key card to access them. She then mentions a tunnel that leads to a warehouse. Sarah then decides to go to the warehouse, as it's the only place to smuggle someone out of that building. They come across a security guard in the hall, and Sarah attacks him from behind and chokes him until he passes out. Sarah takes his access card and cuffs him to stop him from raising an alarm. As they head towards the warehouse through the tunnel, they hear a guard approaching and hide behind a corner. As the guard closes in, Sarah experiences one of those traumatic episodes, and her breathing gets heavy. However, the guard passes without noticing. They continue to the warehouse, and in the office, she learns that no truck has left after her son has gone missing, and the next truck will leave the building in an hour. Sarah believes her son hasn't left the building. She also finds the locker of the female janitor and breaks it to find the bag, and discovers drugs in it. They return to Irina's room to hide those drugs, and Sarah believes they kidnapped Josh because he must have witnessed their drug transaction. She refuses to help Irina, as she plans to bring the head of security to expose the drug trade and get her son back. Irina calls her a psycho, and her son doesn't exist. This makes Sarah angry, and they get into a fight before Sarah pulls out a flash drive from Irina's clothes, and questions her real identity. Shortly, someone knocks on the door. Irina goes to open the door while Sarah hides. The men at the door start attacking Irina, so Sarah jumps in to save her and takes them down. As she leaves the room, she is confronted by Sergeant Donovan, before Eric shows up from behind and injects her with a sedative. While going unconscious, she remembers her time in the military, where she fell in love with a fellow soldier, and they ended up having a son. Sarah then regains consciousness to find herself restrained to a hospital bed. She finds Eric and Director Deborah standing next to her. Sarah informs them about the drugs and thinks it may be the reason for her son's disappearance. But they dismiss her and reveal that her mother has called to inform them that she is suffering from PTSD and is sometimes delusional. Deborah thinks it must be from the traumatic experience in Afghanistan and the death of her son's father during the mission. Sarah insists that her son is missing, and she met Irina while looking for him. But she is informed that there is no one named Irina in that building, and their only guest in the basement denied knowing about her. Sarah finds it hard to believe and demands that they show the security footage to prove that she came alone. Eric shows her the footage from the moment she walked into the building, and her son is nowhere to be seen. She even went to the playground alone. Deborah thinks that her brain is tricking her, and believes she must have lost her son before entering the building. Sarah remembers that she lost her son at the train station, but insists that she walked with her son into the building. But Deborah and Eric think she needs help and decide to hand her over to the German authorities despite Sarah's pleas for help. The following morning, Sarah wakes up to find Irina, who unstraps her. Irina explains they are covering up something, as Sergeant Donovan interrogated her, and he didn't want to hear anything about kidnapping, so she didn't reveal anything about the drugs. Irina thinks her mind is fine and asks Sarah to come with her, but Sarah thinks she is imagining her. So Irina confesses that her real name is Kira, and she comes from the richest family in Belarus. Her father laundered money for corrupt politicians, and when he tried to switch sides, they killed him and also tried to kill her. But she managed to escape and came to seek protection from the U.S. Embassy. She holds evidence that could incriminate her father's killers. The U.S. consulate promised to take her safely to the United States, but she ended up trapped in their basement. After hearing this, Sarah still believes her brain is playing a trick on her. In order to prove she is real, Irina picks up a scissor and tries to slit her wrist with it. Seeing this, Sarah chooses to believe her. They both chose to flee through the windows to avoid being captured by the security camera. Sarah comes up with a plan to find who owns the drug bag. As they are about to run into security guards, they join a group of people leading them to a conference hall. Meanwhile, Sergeant Donovan goes to check on Sarah and learns she has escaped. In the conference hall, Irina posts about the bag on the consulate's website to lure its owner. As they wait, Sarah thinks that her delusions might be real, but Irina convinces her that the consulate is trying to manipulate her to believe in their lies. Moments later, they get a message from the drug owner and plan to meet him at the cafeteria. They climb out of the building and walk through the roof to avoid getting noticed. They eventually get to the cafeteria, and Sarah meets the guy who owns the bag while Irina is watching them from a distance. He claims to know about Josh's whereabouts and agrees to help in return for the bag. But Sarah sees through his lies and realizes he knows nothing, and only wants to get back his drugs. It turns out that he is just a tech guy trafficking those drugs for money. So she asks for the floor plan and a key card with all access. He initially refuses, but when Sarah threatens to expose his drug dealings, he decides to help her and tells her to meet him at the men's restroom in 20 minutes. While waiting, she notices Eric is having lunch with his daughter. Meanwhile, Sergeant Donovan is looking through surveillance cameras, trying to find traces of Sarah. The tech guy manipulates the system's network, causing it to fail. Donovan informs Eric of the situation, and he quickly leaves with his daughter. Sarah then walks to his table to find a toy that his daughter left behind. Since Josh's kidnapping isn't related to drugs, she considers talking to Eric, but Irina insists they can't trust anyone in the consulate. They meet the tech guy in the restroom, and he informs them that the system failure will last for an hour before the cameras come back online. Then, he gives her the blueprint and access card. Sarah then asks him about Donovan's office, and he points at it to them. Sarah then returns his bag before knocking him unconscious. They soon arrive at Donovan's office using the access card, and Irina goes through his mail to find if he is involved with the kidnapping, but they couldn't find anything. So Irina looks through his computer files. They discover that Donovan is the one who sent her the employment letter to bring her into the consulate building for the visa. As they go deep, they find that her files and medical history have been forwarded to his computer, which indicates that someone above him plotted the whole thing. Sarah suggests they look up Eric on the internet, as he is the one who could manipulate the footage and send people after her. They discovered that Eric was a soldier in Afghanistan and also served as a regional specialist in Islamabad, Pakistan. This makes Sarah remember the video that a journalist sent her, which is footage of a hotel in Islamabad. She quickly logs into her email to pull out that video and finds Eric in it. Sarah wonders how Eric is involved in her team's deployment to Afghanistan. She quickly contacts the journalist and informs him that the person in the video is Eric. The journalist verifies the information and reveals Eric has a long history of corruption, but he gets exonerated every time. He claims that Eric is responsible for the ambush that her team walked into in Afghanistan. Just then, Irina notices Donovan walking towards the office. She tells Sarah to hurry up, while the journalist asks for her help to identify the man that Eric was speaking to in the video. Sarah can only see his reflection, but she was sent an enhanced picture. By the time they could download that picture, Donovan walked into the office and found them. Sarah immediately takes him down, and they escape from the office. But Donovan quickly gets back on his feet and starts chasing them down, and calls for backup. They run away to another block using the access card and use a ladder to block Donovan and the guards from entering. They eventually escape to the rooftop, and Sarah explains how her team has been ambushed by terrorists in Afghanistan. They were outnumbered, and all teammates had died before the backup arrived, making her the sole survivor, and while recovering at the hospital, she learned that she was pregnant. Irina then takes out her laptop to check on the downloaded picture, and Sarah recognizes him, as he is one of the terrorists they killed in Afghanistan. Now Sarah has enough evidence to prove that Eric is conspiring with the terrorists, but she insists on returning to the warehouse. Irina thinks it's a bad idea and suggests they should submit the evidence to the council to get Eric arrested. Sarah dismisses her, and eventually they arrive at the warehouse. Sarah tells Irina to sneak into a truck that's about to leave and instructs her to take a train to France, then fly to Mexico, so she has a good chance of getting into the United States. Irina refuses to leave her alone, but Sarah convinces her that she will be fine. She then distracts the guards and steals a truck, while Irina sneaks into one of the trucks. The guards start shooting at her, causing it to crash, but she manages to get out unharmed and runs back into the building, fighting with the guards along the way. She eventually arrives at the pool, where she is confronted by Eric, and they get into a hand-to-hand combat. During the fight, they fall into the pool, and Eric overpowers and tries to drown her. Sarah uses all her strength to break free from his hold and gets out of the pool. She then tackles Eric before taking his gun and pointing it at his head. Eric finally admits he kidnapped her son, and claims he is safe. She wonders why he lured them into the consulate, and reveals she is aware of his involvement with the terrorists and killing her team in Afghanistan. Eric admits he had no choice but to kill her since she is the only witness to the ambush, and the investigative journalist could expose him with her help. He refuses to reveal Josh's location and threatens that her son will starve to death if she kills him. Realizing that he is not going to reveal her son's location, she strikes him on his face and throws the gun before leaving. She decides to find Josh herself. With the help of the blueprint, she looks everywhere for her son, but there's no trace of him. She even finds safe rooms, but they are empty. Sarah soon realizes that 1 hour has passed and the cameras are back online. Meanwhile, Donovan finds Eric by the pool. A female officer suggests they should trigger the alarm, but Eric refuses. Meanwhile, Sarah goes extreme. She finds some chemicals and mixes them, creating an explosion in the hallway. She then escapes through the rooftop to the other side of the building. The explosion caught the attention of Deborah, and instructs Eric to issue code red and kill Sarah on sight. All the units are deployed into the building to find Sarah. Meanwhile, she finds Eric's daughter and lies that she was sent by her father to pick her up. When she gets suspicious, Sarah pulls out the toy she left in the cafeteria. Seeing the toy, the girl is convinced and goes along with Sarah. Sarah brings the girl into the safe room and locks it. She then calls Eric to inform him of the situation. Eric, Donovan, and the guards get to the safe room, and Sarah demands Eric for her son's release in exchange for his daughter. To make things more complicated, she turns off the air supply in the chamber to suffocate his daughter. Sarah plays with the girl for a while until she gets tired, and Sarah puts her to bed. After a while, Deborah calls Sarah and tries to convince her to release the girl. But Sarah explains that Eric is corrupt, he conspired with the terrorists to kill her team and lured her into the consulate to kill her. Deborah doesn't believe her and thinks she is delusional. So Sarah decides to talk to Eric, and she realizes that he is not going to give in, while he is convinced that she is not going to hurt his daughter, and orders Sarah to release the girl. She initially refuses, but upon seeing the girl's condition, she changes her mind and restores the oxygen level. Sarah finally agrees to release the girl, but wants to speak privately with Eric. After releasing the girl, Eric steps into the chamber. Sarah realizes he won't release Josh while she is alive, so she decides to give up her life after he leaves the chamber and requests that he hand Josh over to her mom. But Eric realizes she is trying to get his confession and turns the camera and speaker off. Sarah asks why he is doing this. Eric sits down and explains that he sent her a fake job offer to lure her into the consulate, where he can control everything, and kidnapped her son, so that she would go around the building and search for him, and they kill Irina and frame her for that murder. Then they would follow protocol and shoot her on sight. However, he never thought she would put on this level of fight. Eric then confesses that when he was injured during his service, the government abandoned him and placed him in a dead-end desk job with low pay, making him unable to provide for his family. So he had to sell information to the terrorists for money, which led Sarah's team to be ambushed. She gets frustrated with his explanation and yells at him to leave, but instead, he pulls out his gun and shoots her in the stomach. Then he shoots himself in the leg, making it look like she shot him. Eric walks out of the chamber, accusing her of trying to kill him. The chamber closes with Sarah bleeding inside. As she lies down, she recalls the day of the ambush and how her boyfriend had died. Her trauma causes her to hallucinate that his body is lying next to her. But the memory of her son soon brings her back to reality. So, she gathers all her strength and pulls out Eric's daughter's toy hidden under the blanket. Meanwhile, the officers plant the bombs on the door to get to Sarah. As Donovan is about to detonate, Sarah crawls to the door and opens the chamber, and plays Eric's confession from the toy, which also happens to be a recording device. Everyone hears that conversation, and Deborah realizes Sarah has been telling the truth the whole time. She orders Eric's arrest, and Josh is eventually rescued from the secret room. Sarah soon regains consciousness and reunites with her son. 8 weeks later, Sarah is granted a visa to the United States, and learns that Eric got detained. She informs that to Irina on a video call and plans to meet her soon. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more content.